Hi, I'm Roxanne, and I never thought Thanksgiving would be the day my own sister would humiliate me in front of the whole family. But worse than the insult? The secret betrayal that followed. I was the one who always gave, always there, financially and emotionally, but in the end, they took everything. I cut off her $21,000 tuition fund, and trust me, it's a decision I'll never regret. But what happens when your own family turns on you? Have you ever had to make a decision that changed everything? How did it feel to stand up for yourself, even if it meant losing it all? Tell me in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts. Also, where are you watching from? Let me know. The Thanksgiving table was set, but it wasn't for me. Not really. I had been looking forward to this family gathering, but the second I stepped into the house, I could feel it. The subtle shift, like an invisible wall had been built between me and everyone else. It wasn't just the usual chaos of a holiday dinner. It was something deeper, something colder. The laughter was too loud, the conversations too energetic, and I was invisible. "Roxanne, you're here!" My mom greeted me with a smile, but I could tell it didn't quite reach her eyes. I gave her a tight smile and a half-hearted hug. She'd always been the one to hold the family together, but tonight I couldn't help but feel like she was more interested in keeping up appearances than actually noticing me. My sister Vivian was already sitting at the table, looking perfect as always. Her shiny hair, her delicate features, her effortless grace. It was like she had everything I didn't. And that was fine. I wasn't bothered by her beauty or by how she always seemed to get what she wanted. But today, it stung in a way I couldn't ignore. The meal began, but there was an unspoken tension. Vivian was chatting with everyone, her boyfriend Maxwell, her friends, while I sat there, trying to make conversation with no one really listening. When I made a joke about my freelance work, no one laughed. My mom nodded vaguely, and my dad just mumbled something about the weather. It wasn't new, but tonight it felt like more than just their indifference. It felt deliberate. And then, the moment that broke me. My mom, standing at the head of the table, looked at me with her typical, overly cheerful expression and said, "Sorry, Roxanne, we've got no room for you here. You'll have to sit at the kids' table." A chill ran down my spine. The kids' table? Really? It wasn't that I cared about sitting with the adults or the kids. It was the way she said it, like I was a child, like I didn't belong at the family table anymore. I swallowed hard, but no words came out. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want them to see how much it hurt. I found the kids' table at the far end of the room. It was embarrassing the way everyone stared at me, but it wasn't just the kids who noticed. It was everyone. Maxwell, who had been so quiet until now, glanced at me from across the room. His eyes were filled with something, pity, disdain? I wasn't sure. Vivian, on the other hand, didn't even acknowledge my presence. Her focus remained fixed on Maxwell. She had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I, on the other hand, was the afterthought, the one who didn't fit into their picture-perfect world. I sat down, feeling the weight of the rejection settle into my bones. It wasn't just the kids' table. It wasn't just that they had dismissed me in front of everyone. It was everything. Everything that had happened over the years. The way my family had treated me like an outsider, despite all the sacrifices I had made. All the times I'd stepped up, offering my support to Vivian when she needed it, only to be treated like I wasn't worthy of a seat at the table. And then, as if it wasn't enough, the conversation shifted to something that made my heart race. I overheard Maxwell asking Vivian about her tuition. Again. I wasn't supposed to know, but I'd been footing the bill for her education for the last 2 years. Vivian had never asked me for help. In fact, I don't think she ever truly thanked me for it. But somehow she always expected it, and I, foolishly, had continued giving. Maxwell's voice reached me. "I didn't realize you were still getting help from Roxanne. I thought you were paying your own way." I froze. My hands trembled around my glass of water. I felt the blood drain from my face as I realized that Maxwell, Vivian's boyfriend, knew about the financial support I had been providing for her. I felt exposed, vulnerable. This wasn't just about the tuition. This was about everything. Every time I had been taken advantage of, every time I'd been the one to sacrifice for her, to make sure she had what she needed, even when it cost me my own peace of mind. Maxwell looked directly at me, his face a mix of disappointment and judgment. "I think it's time you cut her off," he said quietly. That was it. That was the last straw. I couldn't bear it anymore. My own sister, her boyfriend, my family, all of them had made me feel like I wasn't enough. I stood up, walked out of the room, and made my decision. No more. I didn't flinch when I pulled out my phone and logged into the university's payment portal. I found Vivian's tuition fund, and in that moment, I did what I had been too afraid to do for years. I withdrew the funds. I removed myself as the payer. I was done. The anger was still simmering in my chest when I woke up the next morning. It wasn't just the humiliation from yesterday. It was the realization that I had been enabling Vivian for years. I had been the one to pay for her college, the one to send money when she was short on rent, the one to pick up the pieces every time she made a mess of her life. And for what? For her to look at me like I was nothing more than an ATM, for her to treat me like I didn't matter. I grabbed my phone and opened the university's portal. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking slightly as I hovered over the payment details. I could feel the weight of my decision pressing down on me. This wasn't just about money, it was about everything. About me finally taking control of my own life. I clicked the button to remove myself as the payer for Vivian's tuition. As the confirmation message popped up, a strange mix of relief and regret washed over me. It felt final, and in some twisted way it felt good. No more living in her shadow, no more being the silent benefactor in the background, pretending it didn't bother me. I had given too much of myself, and for what? A family that saw me as a resource, not a person. But then I thought of Vivian, her future in jeopardy without that money. She'd probably hate me for it, but at that moment I didn't care. She needed to learn how to stand on her own, to stop leaning on me like I was some sort of lifeline. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting out a long breath. "It's done," I whispered to myself. But the feeling of empowerment didn't last long. Guilt quickly crept in. Was I doing the right thing? Was I being too harsh? Would my family ever forgive me for this? My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a text from my mom. "Roxanne, I think you should reconsider. Vivian needs the help. She's your sister." My stomach churned as I read the message. It wasn't just my mom reaching out. It was her way of subtly manipulating me. She always did this, using guilt to get what she wanted. And in the back of my mind, I could already hear her voice, the one that said, "You're the one who's supposed to help her. You're the responsible one." My finger hovered over the phone, tempted to respond. But what would I say? What could I say that would change anything? I was done. I had done more than enough. But still, the pressure from my mother weighed heavily on me. I thought of all the times my mom had backed Vivian's choices, even when they were reckless. The way my family had treated me like the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who didn't need anything. And all along, I had been silently bearing the burden, always doing for others, never asking for anything in return. But no more. I had to put myself first. I had to stop letting them walk all over me. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Vivian. The words on the screen made my stomach drop. "Why did you do it, Roxanne? Why did you cut off my tuition? You know I need that money." I could almost hear the accusation in her tone. The guilt seeped in again, but I wasn't going to let it consume me. This was it. The storm was about to break, and I had no choice but to face it head-on. I stared at the message for a long time before typing my response. "Vivian, you need to figure this out on your own. I'm done enabling you." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. My heart was racing, my hands shaking. The consequences of my decision were about to unfold, and I had no idea how it would all play out. But I had made my choice. There was no turning back now. The silence between Maxwell and me was unbearable. His eyes were cold as he sat across from me, the weight of what he had just discovered hanging between us like an invisible storm. He wasn't speaking yet, but I could see the wheels turning in his mind, processing the truth of what had been hidden for so long. I shifted uncomfortably, my hands fidgeting with the hem of my sweater. It had been an agonizing decision to make, but the consequences were starting to settle in. I knew it was coming, the confrontation, and yet nothing could have prepared me for how it would feel when it finally arrived. "You've been lying to me, haven't you?" Maxwell's voice was low, but there was no mistaking the anger beneath it. I froze. The words stung more than I'd expected. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though my heart was pounding in my chest. Maxwell leaned forward, his gaze locked onto mine with an intensity that made me want to look away. "All this time you've been paying for Vivian's life, her tuition, her bills, everything. You never told me, Roxanne." My throat tightened. I knew this was coming, but hearing it aloud felt like a slap to the face. I opened my mouth, but no words came out at first. How could I explain this to him? How could I justify the sacrifices I'd made for my sister when I knew it was breaking me in ways I couldn't explain? "I did it because I love her," I finally said, my voice sounding small even to my own ears. "She's my sister. I've always been there for her." Maxwell's expression hardened. "And I've been standing by, watching you destroy yourself. You're enabling her, Roxanne. You've been enabling her all this time." His words hit harder than I expected. I wanted to defend myself, to tell him that it wasn't as simple as he made it sound. But deep down, I knew he was right. Vivian had never truly stood on her own, and I had always been there, rescuing her. Now, I was paying the price. "Maxwell, I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't just watch her struggle," I said, my voice faltering. Maxwell's face twisted in frustration. "You've done more than enough, Roxanne, and look where it's gotten you. Look at what it's done to all of us." His voice cracked slightly, the emotion seeping through his anger. "I can't support you doing this anymore. I can't stand by and watch you destroy yourself for someone who doesn't appreciate it." The room felt colder as his words settled in. I felt a lump form in my throat. I wasn't sure if it was the anger in his voice or the crushing realization that he was right, but the weight of it all was suffocating. "Vivian needs to learn. She has to learn to stand on her own," I said, though I wasn't sure if I was trying to convince him or myself. "I can't keep doing this for her." Maxwell stood up abruptly, pacing the floor. "You're right, but it's not just about her. It's about you and me. I don't want to keep carrying this burden. I've been helping you, supporting you, but I'm done, Roxanne. I can't keep going down this road." His words sliced through me, and I felt a deep pang in my chest. "You're cutting ties with Vivian?" I asked quietly. He paused, his back turned to me. "I have to. I can't keep being her fallback, her lifeline. It's destroying me too, and it's destroying you." The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. "Maxwell," I started, but he cut me off. "I'm done," he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I can't keep making excuses for her. For you. It's over." I stood there in shock, my mind racing. The thought of losing him, of seeing the final break between him and Vivian, was more than I could process. I wanted to reach out, to beg him to stay, but I couldn't. He had made his decision, just as I had. The silence stretched between us as he walked to the door, his footsteps heavy with finality. Before leaving, he turned back to me. "I hope you realize what you've done, Roxanne," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "You can't just keep saving everyone. You have to save yourself first." And then he was gone. I stood there, the weight of his words sinking in. The room felt colder, emptier. And in the aftermath of his departure, I was left with the hollow echo of the decision I'd made, the one I had to stand by, even if it meant losing him in the process. I didn't know how I was going to face Vivian. I didn't know how to handle the fallout that was coming. But as the minutes passed, I realized that there was no going back. What had been done could not be undone. I couldn't stop replaying Maxwell's words in my head. They were sharper than any knife, cutting through the small remaining pieces of my trust in him. As the hours passed after his departure, the weight of everything fell heavy on my chest. But it wasn't just Maxwell who had a right to feel betrayed. It was Dorian, too. Dorian had always been an observer. He'd been there, quietly, watching the chaos unfold, but I had never imagined he'd uncover the truth. Not like this. Not so soon. He must have been piecing it all together. Vivian's ever-growing dependency, the long nights I spent helping her with tuition, the way I'd always come to her rescue, no questions asked. And now, the consequences were clear. I could feel the tension building between Dorian and Vivian as soon as he walked through the door. His face was a storm, all frustration and confusion, as if he was trying to figure out how it had all gone so wrong. He had trusted Vivian, believed in her, but the truth, my truth, had cracked his image of her like glass. "Vivian," he said quietly, but I could see the anger brewing beneath his calm exterior. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you hide it from me?" Vivian stiffened, her face flushed with the realization that her secret had been exposed. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her, until she opened her mouth. "I didn't hide anything," she said, her voice trembling. "It's just complicated. I never meant for it to turn out this way, Dorian." But Dorian wasn't having it. "Complicated?" he repeated, his voice rising. "You've been living off Roxanne for months, and I had no idea. No clue that she's been paying for your life. This is beyond complicated." I saw the moment Dorian's world shifted. His eyes, once full of affection for Vivian, now reflected betrayal. It was as if he was seeing her for the first time, and what he saw was a stranger. His words grew colder, sharper, cutting through the years of lies. "You lied to me, Vivian," he spat, his fists clenched at his sides. "You've been using me, and you've been using Roxanne, too." The room was charged with tension. I stood there, frozen, watching them unravel before me. Vivian's face twisted into a look of defensiveness, but it was too late. Dorian had already made his decision. "You've taken enough from me," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, but there was finality in his tone. "I can't keep doing this. I'm done." Vivian's eyes widened, and for the first time she seemed truly vulnerable. Her pride, her anger, all of it melted away in that instant. "Dorian, no, you can't do this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, you don't understand. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." But Dorian was resolute. "I can't be the fool anymore. Not for you, not for anyone." The words stung like a slap, and I saw Vivian's hands tremble as she tried to hold herself together. But the dam had broken, and there was no going back. Dorian had walked away from her, just as I had walked away from the life I had built for her. As he turned to leave, he shot a glance at me, his expression softer than it had been all evening. "I'm sorry, Roxanne," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was wrong. I should have seen it sooner." And with that, he was gone. The room felt empty, even though we were both still there. I watched as Vivian sank onto the couch, her face buried in her hands. I should have felt satisfaction. I should have felt vindicated, but instead, there was only emptiness. I couldn't tell if I was relieved or heartbroken. Dorian's words had been a reminder of everything I had given up for Vivian, but even as I stood there, watching her unravel before me, I couldn't deny the guilt that settled in my chest. What had I done? 16 years ago, it had been different. Vivian had been the little sister I adored. I had always wanted to protect her, to take care of her, but somewhere along the way, I had lost myself. And now, as the truth came to light, I wondered if I had done the right thing. "Roxanne," Vivian's voice cut through my thoughts, weak and full of sorrow. She looked up at me, her eyes swollen from crying. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you just help me?" Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, I thought I might break. But then, a strange calm washed over me. "I did help you," I said softly, my voice steady. "But you never asked for help. You just took, and I couldn't keep giving anymore. The silence between us stretched on, heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. As I stood there, I realized that the bonds we had once shared had shattered beyond repair. The fallout from my decision had only just begun, and I didn't know how much longer I could bear it. But there was no turning back now. I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection as I prepared for what I knew was coming. The knot in my stomach tightened with each passing minute. Sylvia had been relentless, sending message after message, each one more desperate than the last. Come home. We need to talk. This isn't you, Roxanne. But I wasn't the same person I had been a year ago, or even a month ago. I was done pretending that everything was okay, that I could keep sacrificing my peace for them. My hands shook as I adjusted my blouse, but I steadied myself. I had to go through with it. I had to face her. As I drove to her house, the familiar streets of our suburban neighborhood seemed less welcoming than they once were. The houses, once filled with warmth and shared memories, now felt suffocating. I thought about the countless Thanksgiving dinners, the way I'd always shown up, willing to give without question. But now, it felt different. Now, I wasn't sure if I even knew who I was to them anymore. I pulled into the driveway and parked my car. Sylvia's house stood before me, just as it always had, the neatly manicured lawn and tidy porch betraying the storm brewing inside. I took a deep breath before walking up the steps. The door swung open before I could even knock, and there she was, standing in the doorway, arms crossed. Her face was a mask of concern, but I could see the sharpness in her eyes. Her worry was laced with something more. "Roxanne," she started, her voice gentle but firm. "I don't understand why you're doing this. You know what Vivian means to us. You're hurting the family." I stepped inside, ignoring the familiar scent of lavender and cleaning supplies that usually soothed me. Today, it just felt stifling. "Mom, I'm not hurting anyone. I'm trying to take care of myself for once," I said, my voice steady but laced with frustration. Sylvia's face faltered for a moment, and then she pushed forward, her tone rising. "You've abandoned your sister. She's struggling, and you've been her support. How could you just walk away?" I could feel the heat rising in my chest. "She's been using me, Mom. I've been nothing but a lifeline for her, and she's never appreciated it. I'm not going to keep enabling her." Sylvia's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're talking about family, about your own flesh and blood. How can you just walk away from her like that?" Her words were like a slap, but I held my ground. "I've been walking on eggshells for too long. Every time she needed something, I gave. But it's never been enough. It's never been about what I want, what I need. It's always been about her, about all of you. I'm done." The silence between us was thick, oppressive. Sylvia took a step toward me, and her voice softened. "You're my daughter. I'm your mother. You've always been my responsibility, my priority. But you—" Her voice cracked for a moment, and I saw the vulnerability I had never expected. "I don't know how to fix this, Roxanne. I didn't mean to push you away." For the first time, I saw her wavering, but I wasn't moved. "It's too late, Mom," I whispered. "You've already pushed me away." Her breath hitched as she stared at me, her expression a mixture of guilt and disbelief. "You were always the strong one," she murmured, almost to herself. "I never realized how much I took from you." I didn't respond. The damage had been done. I could feel the weight of the years of resentment in my chest, heavy and suffocating. "I can't fix this anymore, Sylvia. I can't keep trying to be the person you want me to be." Her eyes were wet, and for a brief moment, I thought she might break down. But then, just as quickly, she straightened her shoulders, her composure returning. "You don't mean that," she said firmly, though there was an edge of uncertainty in her voice. I took one last look at her. "I do mean it, and I'm not coming back. Not this time." I turned to leave, but before I could reach the door, Sylvia called out, "Roxanne, please, I've lost so much already. Don't make me lose you too." I stopped in my tracks, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. You already have, Mom, I said softly, the words slipping from my mouth like poison. You lost me the moment you tried to control my life. The door clicked shut behind me, and I walked to my car. The finality of the moment hit me hard. My heart was heavy, but I knew I had made the right choice. For the first time in years, I felt like I was walking in the right direction, towards something better, something of my own making. I drove away from Sylvia's house, my mind swirling with everything that had just happened. But the road ahead was uncertain, and I couldn't help but wonder how much longer this tension would last. The future was open, but it didn't feel as hopeful as I had imagined. The damage was done. The family I had tried so hard to please had fractured, and now I had to face the consequences of my decisions. The sun dipped below the horizon. I stood in the hallway, the silence surrounding me almost suffocating. My heart was pounding as I braced myself for what was about to unfold. I had always known that things between Vivian, Maxwell, and me couldn't stay this fragile forever. But now, everything was unraveling at once. Maxwell had stormed into the room just moments ago, his face flushed with anger. He had finally figured out what Vivian had been hiding, and the floodgates had opened. It was no longer just about financial support. It was about trust, manipulation, and betrayal. "You've been lying to me, Vivian." Maxwell's voice was sharp, cutting through the tense air. "All this time you've been using me, using my money, just like you did with Roxanne." I watched as the words hit Vivian like a slap to the face. Her expression faltered for a split second, but she quickly regained composure, her eyes narrowing. "I'm not using anyone," Vivian spat back, her tone defensive. "You don't understand. Roxanne never understood, and now you're all just turning on me." Maxwell's anger flared. "Don't twist this. You've manipulated me into thinking we had something real. You were never honest with me, Vivian. This is who you really are." Roxanne stood there, quietly observing the confrontation between the two. The emotional weight of everything she'd endured was clear in her eyes. She had been the one to step away first, but now she saw the fallout of her decision. The explosion of tension between Maxwell and Vivian made her feel both relief and sorrow. Relief because she was no longer part of this destructive cycle, and sorrow because she had lost a piece of her family forever. Vivian, on the other hand, was desperate to salvage whatever she could. She turned her gaze to me, her expression pleading. "You've always been against me, Roxanne, always trying to make me feel less than you. Now look where we are." Her words stung, but I held my ground. I had heard these accusations before. It was always my fault, my problem, my doing. But not this time, not anymore. Maxwell's frustration reached its peak, and I saw the moment of realization hit him. His shoulders slumped, the anger dissipating into regret. His eyes turned to me, and for the first time I saw him truly see me, not as a part of this endless drama, but as someone who had been suffering in silence all along. "I never knew," he said quietly, his voice tinged with guilt. "I never knew how much you were giving, how much you sacrificed for her, for all of us. And I just kept blaming you." I looked at him, my chest tight with the weight of everything that had led us to this moment. "It's too late for apologies, Maxwell. I don't need them anymore." The words tasted bitter, but they were true. It wasn't just about him. It was about me, about finally taking control of my life. Maxwell nodded, his expression one of deep regret. He took a few steps back, running his hand through his hair. I was blind. I let myself get caught up in her lies. Vivian's face twisted with anger, her mask cracking as she finally snapped. "So this is it? You're all just going to turn your backs on me?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady and firm. "This is where it ends, Vivian. You've pushed us all too far." Maxwell's face was a mix of guilt and sadness as he turned away from Vivian. "I can't keep living like this. Not with you." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. It was the kind of silence that screamed louder than words ever could. As Vivian stood there, seething with disbelief, I realized the full extent of the damage, not just between the three of us, but within the entire family. The truth had been exposed, and there was no going back. Roxanne's resolve hardened. There was no room left for negotiation, no space for apologies or regrets. The past had been broken beyond repair. She could feel the weight of the decision that she had made. Severing ties with her family was final. She wasn't going back. But despite the clarity of her choice, there was a sorrow that lingered. The emotional toll of what she had just experienced washed over her like a wave. She wasn't ready to say goodbye to everything she had known, but she also couldn't keep dragging herself back into the chaos that had become her life. As she walked away from the confrontation, a message pinged on her phone. The notification read, "I can't believe you'd do this to me, Roxanne. You've destroyed everything." The words stung, but Roxanne knew what had to be done. This was the last time anyone would manipulate her. The silence in her heart was louder than the pain of the past. Her heart ached, but she was stronger now. She had made the hardest decision of her life, and now she had to move forward. The tension was thick as she stepped out of the door. What came next was still uncertain, but Roxanne was certain of one thing. She had finally taken control of her life. No more lies, no more manipulation. I stood in front of the mirror, staring at the reflection that seemed both foreign and familiar. My eyes were tired, weighed down by years of expectations, manipulation, and regret. But now, there was something different in them. Something that had been buried for so long it was almost a shock to see it there. Strength. The weight of my decision felt both liberating and terrifying. I had made the choice to leave it all behind. My family, the years of compromise, the guilt that had chained me to a life I never wanted. There was no going back. I had finally taken control. But even with that sense of empowerment, a lingering sadness settled deep in my chest. It was hard to shake off the years of being manipulated, of giving and giving with nothing in return. But I knew now that this was the only way forward. For too long I had lived for others, trying to please people who would never be satisfied. No more. I was reclaiming my life, no matter the cost. The phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a message from the company I had interviewed with a few days ago. "Roxanne, we'd like to offer you the position. The salary and benefits package are competitive, and we believe you'd be a great fit for the role." For a moment, I just stared at the screen, my heart skipping a beat. It was the opportunity I had been waiting for. A new start in a new city, far away from the toxic web of my family. I felt a rush of exhilaration. This was it. This was the sign that I had made the right choice. The right path was finally unfolding before me. But as soon as the thrill settled, reality crept in. Would I really be able to leave everything behind? Would the weight of my decision, my rebellion, haunt me forever? The phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Sylvia. "Roxanne, you can't do this. You've always been the strong one. You've always taken care of us. You know we need you." I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. My mother, once so supportive, now reduced to this desperate plea. It stung, but I knew I couldn't go back. I had given them everything for so long, and it had never been enough. She didn't need me. She needed to stand on her own 2 feet. She had never taught me how to take care of myself. She had only ever demanded that I care for everyone else. I quickly typed out a response. "I've made my decision, Mom. I can't keep doing this. I need to live my own life now." My hands trembled as I hit send. It was the first time I had truly stood up for myself. For once, I wasn't apologizing for my choices. For once, I wasn't caving in to their pressure. A few minutes later, a message came from Vivian. My sister had always been the one who seemed to see right through me, the one who knew how to push my buttons. This time, it was no different. "Are you really going to do this, Roxanne? I thought you loved me." Her words hit like a punch to the gut. I had always loved her, always tried to be there for her, even when it cost me my own happiness. But that was the problem, wasn't it? I had been giving and receiving nothing in return. She wasn't my responsibility, no matter how much I cared for her. "I do love you," I typed back, my fingers shaking. "But I can't keep enabling this. I can't keep being your safety net while you refuse to take responsibility for your own life. The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at the screen, waiting for her to respond, but the message never came. I didn't know what would happen next. Maybe she would hate me. Maybe my family would never speak to me again. But for the first time in my life, I felt a sense of peace. This was my moment. I was choosing my future, not their expectations. Just as I was about to close my phone, another message came through, this one from an unknown number. Roxanne, it's Dorian. I know this might be the last time we speak, but I just wanted to say that I understand now. I'm sorry for everything. I froze, the weight of his words sinking in. Dorian had always been caught in the middle, always siding with Vivian, always letting her manipulate him. But now, he was apologizing. He saw what I had seen for so long, and I felt a strange comfort in his words, though they came too late. Still, it was a small piece of closure, a final acknowledgement of the sacrifices I had made and the pain I had carried for years. With a deep breath, I set my phone down. The future was still uncertain, but it no longer scared me. For the first time, I was living for myself. But just as I began to feel the weight lift off my shoulders, a new message flashed on the screen. Vivian again. This time it was urgent, desperate. I need your help. Please, Roxanne, I can't do this without you. Her plea was raw, but I could see through it. The manipulation, the guilt, everything I had just fought so hard to escape. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and set my phone down. I had to do this. I had to break free. I had reached a point where I felt like I could no longer breathe without facing the consequences of my decisions. The silence of the house was deafening, as though the world outside had been put on pause. I could hear the rush of my heartbeat, steady but filled with anticipation. My hand shook slightly as I held the phone, staring at the screen. Vivian had tried to reach me again, her message just as desperate as before. The silence between us had stretched for days, yet her voice echoed in my mind with every passing hour. I knew she had been struggling. I had seen the cracks in her carefully constructed world. But what she had done, what she was doing now, was a betrayal that ran deeper than I could have ever imagined. I could feel it, like a weight on my chest, pushing me to the edge. I couldn't turn back now, no matter how hard the pull. I had finally made the choice to cut all ties with my family. But that didn't mean I was free of them, not yet. Not with Vivian still fighting for control over my emotions, my future. I closed my eyes, trying to calm the storm in my mind, but it didn't work. The guilt, the sadness, the anger, it all threatened to swallow me whole. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a post from Vivian, and the world around me seemed to stop as I read her words. Here's the truth. My sister Roxanne has ruined my future. She took everything from me and left me to fend for myself. I thought family would always have my back, but it turns out I was wrong. She's the one who abandoned me, not the other way around. Betrayed. Chakra sisters. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. I sat there, unable to move for a few seconds, the screen still glowing in my hands. It wasn't just a post. It was a declaration. Vivian had taken the private mess of our lives and put it out for the world to see. She had turned me into the villain, painted me as the heartless sister who cared nothing for her, and the world was going to eat it up. I stood up, pacing the room. My hands were shaking, my heart racing, but there was a sense of finality now, a certainty that hadn't been there before. I wasn't going to let her control me anymore. She had pushed me to the breaking point, but this time, I wasn't going to break. The doorbell rang, breaking my reverie. I opened it to find Vivian standing on the other side, her eyes red and swollen. She looked like a broken version of the girl I once knew, but I wasn't fooled anymore. I had seen the manipulations, the lies, and the hurt she had caused. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there, looking at me as if waiting for me to speak. I couldn't do it. I couldn't pretend that everything was okay anymore. "What do you want, Vivian?" My voice was steady, but beneath the calm, I could feel the boiling anger threatening to rise. I... She paused, her words faltering, but she quickly regained her composure. I just wanted you to know that I didn't mean for it to go this far. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. You didn't mean for it to go this far? My voice rose now, filled with frustration. You've been lying to me for years, using me for everything I have, and now you want to act like the victim? It's too late for apologies, Vivian. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. I don't have anything left for you, I continued, my words sharp. You've burned every bridge, and now you want to make me the bad guy for doing what was right? She stepped back, her shoulders slumping as if I had struck her. But I had no remorse. There was nothing left to say. The betrayal was too deep, and the damage too great. I don't expect you to understand, she whispered, her voice shaky. But you're my sister. You were supposed to be there for me. I crossed my arms, looking at her with a mixture of pity and anger. You've never cared about me, Vivian. Not really. You only cared about what I could do for you. And now you've lost that. Maybe it's time for you to learn how to live on your own, for once. Vivian opened her mouth to say something else, but I turned away, refusing to hear it. I couldn't listen anymore. I had to walk away, had to let go. I had fought this battle for so long, but now it was over. I walked out the door, closing it behind me, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. But the weight of the fallout pressed down on me. The social media storm had only just begun, and I knew the consequences were going to be far-reaching. People would take sides. Some would call me a hero, others a villain. But in the end, none of that mattered. What mattered was that I had finally chosen me. And no matter how hard this was, no matter how many people tried to pull me back, I knew I would never let them drag me down again. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, standing tall as I took the first step into my new life. The world felt different now, open and wide, full of possibilities I hadn't seen before. But in the distance, I stood in front of the window, watching the world move on, indifferent to my turmoil. The weight of the decisions I had made was finally sinking in, but so was the quiet relief that came with them. The family I once knew was shattered, and despite the sadness gnawing at me, there was a sense of closure, a sense of control that I had never felt before. I had done what I needed to do. I had made the hard choice to sever ties, to stop enabling the toxic behavior of those who had once been the center of my world. It had cost me more than I could have ever imagined, but I had survived. 16 years ago, I had been a different person. I had walked into that Thanksgiving dinner with the hope that family meant love, support, and loyalty. Instead, I left with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal and the realization that I had been living in someone else's shadow for far too long. Now, standing here, alone in the quiet of my apartment, I understood that the road ahead would not be easy. I had no idea what the future would hold, but I knew that I couldn't go back. Not to them, not to that life. The sacrifices I made for Vivian, for my family, had shaped who I was, but they no longer defined me. I heard my phone buzz, but I didn't need to look. I knew it was from Vivian. It had become a cruel routine, her trying to worm her way back into my life with apologies that felt hollow and accusations that felt like daggers. This time, though, it was different. I had already made my peace, or at least, I was learning how to. Vivian's latest message was brief. I know you're angry, but I need you. Please, just listen to me. I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. I had listened to her for years. I had tried to be the sister she needed, but she had always been the one to take my time, my energy, my compassion. It was never enough. Nothing was ever enough. I hit the delete button on the message and tossed my phone aside, a cold sense of finality settling in my chest. That part of my life was over. But then the next message came through, this one more desperate, more raw. She was reaching out, not just for my help, but for validation, for forgiveness. Please, I don't know where to go. You're all I have left. I stood there for a long time, staring at the screen. The pull was familiar, like a thread I couldn't cut. a tether that had been holding me in place for too long. But I knew what I had to do. I had to keep walking forward. I sent a single reply. You need to figure it out on your own. I can't be there for you anymore. The weight in my chest didn't disappear, but something shifted. Something that felt like freedom. As I sat on the edge of the couch, the silence around me was deafening, but it wasn't the same kind of silence I had known before. It wasn't the silence of waiting for something to change. It was the silence of acceptance, of understanding that I was no longer a part of that story. I had turned the page. The phone buzzed again, but I ignored it. I knew what was coming. Another attempt to manipulate, to guilt me into returning. But I couldn't go back. Not now, not ever. And then there was the thought I had been avoiding. What did I do now? What was left for me? I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know what my future looked like. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was drowning in someone else's expectations. I could breathe again. I stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the city. The world continued without me, and for once that didn't bother me. It was my time now. But then, as I turned away, I saw the text notification again. This time it was from Maxwell. I hesitated, my heart catching in my throat. What did he want now? The message was simple. Can we talk? I felt my breath catch in my throat. I knew this conversation was coming, and though part of me wanted to engage, to hear him out, I couldn't bring myself to do it. My decision had been made. I had stepped away from the chaos. There was no turning back. I threw my phone on the bed and walked out the door, not looking back. The future was waiting. What I left behind could no longer hold me. Looking back on my journey, I've learned that sometimes the hardest part is standing up for yourself. It's not about being perfect or getting everything right. It's about recognizing when enough is enough and taking back control of your life. The truth is, we all face moments where we have to choose between family loyalty and personal well-being. And while it may seem impossible to walk away, doing so can be the most freeing thing you'll ever do. You don't owe anyone your happiness, and you certainly don't owe anyone your peace. Life is about growth, and sometimes that means leaving the past behind and stepping into a future that's yours to shape. But it's not always easy. It's messy. It's hard. But I promise you it's worth it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that changed your life? What did you learn from it? Share your story in the comments. And if this video resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss what's coming next. And remember, your story is still being written. You have the power to shape it. Keep moving forward. If you liked this video, drop a number 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. Or if this video wasn't your thing, let me know why and where you found it. Honestly, I want to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.